Hello, welcome. My name is Mathieu Dome. I'm the facilitator of the leadership conference that will take place in April, 13th to the 16th of April. I'm making this short video because we'll be working in April with some tools, some concepts, some ideas that I've been developing and I shared with your general team in the preparation to the leadership conference, and we felt it would be important, interesting for you to be able to watch this video and to grasp some of these concepts, because they will help us do the work, and engage with the work that we're planning to do at the leadership conference. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to take you through these concepts and tools and ideas. Okay, so really what I'm going to present to you is based on the U theory. It's been developed in the US by a German guy called Otto Scharmer. Theory U is also known as the U process. There's two ways of using it, and I'm going to go through both of those ways with you today. Basically, this first one is very much to help us think about when we want to transform our own model of governance, our own model of functioning, what are the levels at which we need to intervene? Depending on the outcome that we are looking for, where is it that we need to intervene? So in this model, we see that there's a first level where, there's the current organization, and we can notice that some things are not working properly or as they should. We intervene straight away. We react to a problem, and then the organization is changed slightly. And this can very well work. Yeah, there's no problem with that. Sometimes it just needs a little tweak to work. But that's a first level. It's called the reacting or responding level. But often we find that when, if this doesn't work, if the problem continues to happen, or it's not solved and it's coming back, then we're going to start looking at another level. And then we tend to say, well, it's a structures problem. Yeah, so we're going to look at the structures. And we're going to say, well, all structures may not be adequate anymore. We need to change them. We need to restructure. So typically, as you know, in a religious congregation, this may mean merging some provinces together. We've got too many provinces, let's merge them together. That will solve our problem. It may be that, we've got provincial councils or general council that are too big, given that we have reduced in size. It's mobilizing too many of our resources for leadership. Let's change the structures there and design different leadership teams at provincial or general level. Other structural changes can be made, but as you can see here, we're really at the level of the structures. And sometimes that works, but other times the problem just doesn't go away, and we have to look deeper. What could be the source of our problem? Which means that we keep having problem in the way we function. It's not efficient enough. It's mobilizing too many people, whatever may be the problem. So we then start saying, well, it may be the processes that, also needs addressing. There's a fancy word here called re-engineering or processes. So we need to re-engineer our processes. The processes may be, for example, the decision-making processes. It may be that actually the way we've been making decisions is too cumbersome, too many steps, too long. By the time we need to address the issue and work on it, it's too late because we've taken so long in deciding. That could be one way. Another way could be to say, well, our current processes in decision making, they really involve only a small amount of people, a small amount of members. And so most of us feel disconnected from those decisions. So by the time they're taken and we need to implement them, we don't understand them and we don't invest in them because they're just, we haven't been involved from the start. So that process may need to be re-engineered, redesigned, yeah? It may also be the entry process into the congregation. So how do we welcome new members, new potential members? How do we assess their capacity to lead a religious life and to contribute to a religious consecrated life? How do we form them until they they take their final vows, etc.? It may be that those processes are no longer adapted to our reality. Maybe these need to change. Now, these are, three different levels: just the reacting, or the restructuring, or the working at the level of the processes. But sometimes, each of these levels assume that there's a problem with the system that we've built, that the system is no longer adapted, it's too cumbersome, or whatever. Now, my work with religious congregations, and I've been working with congregations for, similar to yours, really, for the last 12 years, and with other organizations as well, which are not necessarily religious. Some are business or NGOs. What I notice when we get into these issues of transforming models of organizations is that very often we tend to blame the system. We say, well, the system's not working, it's no longer adapted to our reality, etc. But when I dig a bit deeper, then what I realize that sometimes it's not so much the question of the system that's inadequate. It's just that people are not taking up the roles that are theirs to take up in the system. Now, these could be leadership roles. People have been assigned to a leadership role, but they're not taking it up. Okay, that's a possibility. But it's also that people are not taking up their membership role, their role as members. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, I've come across, for example, I'll give you a very illustrative example that I've been, that was told to me by sisters living in a congregation. So in a community, sisters decided to be much more participative in the running of the community. And so they had a community meeting and they thought, how can we be more participative? And they said, well, let's take it in turns to cook. Every evening, one of us will cook the meal, and so that'll be our contribution. That'll be great. So that was a solution that was unanimous. Everybody said, yeah, that's a great idea. So somebody drew up a rota and stuck it on the fridge for the next week and the week after. And then what happened one Sunday evening, the local superior went to the fridge to see whether the rota had been filled for the following week, and it hadn't. There were barely 2 names for at least 7 meals. And in fact, Monday and Tuesday were not filled in. So potentially there was no food for the next couple of nights. Now, this is an example of people not taking up their member role. Because what happened then is the local superior then had to go around and say, look, the rota's not filled in. Who's going to fill this in? This isn't her role. Her role is not to go around and make sure people do what they've said they would do, what they committed to do. That's not her role. Her role is not to take up responsibility for others to compensate for others not doing what they say they would. Her role was to facilitate the conversation where the decision took place. Her role was to ensure that there was a decision that was taken for more participative life in the community, but it's not her role to go around and check people are doing what they say they would. It can end up being her role because people are not taking up their member role. Okay, so you see, the system of the rota in itself wasn't a bad system. What happened is people didn't take up their role in that system, even though they chose that system. Yeah? So instead of changing the rota system, the work needed to be done on people taking up their leadership role. Another example at the level of a more global level is discernment for final vows. There's a shared responsibility in congregation that I work with, where shared responsibility between the novice mistress and the provincial to do an evaluation at the end of a certain period to see whether the young woman who's entered and expressed an interest and maybe taken temporary vows, is ready for final vows. Now, that role requires people to evaluate. So to say, yeah, these are signs that she's ready, and well, no, these are signs that she is not ready. And then once they've done that evaluation in that congregation, they send that over to the general team, who then make their own discernment and then feedback their answer. And what the general team told me is that very often, when that so-called discernment at provincial level arrives to them, well, the evaluation didn't really take place. And we can see that there are a lot of issues with the young women that have not been addressed, sometimes even in community life, because either the community leader or the provincial or the novice mistress did not take up their role in addressing these issues, in raising them, saying there's an issue here, we need to work on it, and working on it. So people are taking up their role in the system, and the problem then migrates to the general level. And so we could say, well, the entry process into the congregation is not good, we need to rethink it. Well, maybe it's good, it's just people are not taking up their role in that process. So part of the work that needs to happen is to check, is it a structures issue? Is it a process issue? Is it a role-taking issue? And so in order to do that, what's going to be helpful is to dive deeper, to dive at the level of the mental models. In other words, what are the mental representations I hold in my mind of the reality and of my role in it, of how things functions? How do I, what's the story I have in my mind, whether it's conscious or unconscious? What's the way I construct the reality in my mind? What's my mental model? I'll give you another example of a mental model that's very interesting. Working with a congregation, a sister, it was in a sort of extended general council. There was the general council and plenty of provincials, and several of them kept coming up with a similar phrase, similar issues they were raising. We're stretched, we're under stress because we don't have enough sisters. Yeah, we have all these activities and apostolates to run, and we just don't have enough sisters. Yeah, sisters are aging. Some sisters have died. We've got fewer vocations coming in, so we don't have enough sisters. Now, there are several mental models in there which I'll try to unpack. One of them is the mental model that the solution to the problem is, can sisters come from another part of the congregation to come and help us here? Because if they could, that would solve our problem. Now, in itself, this is okay as a mental model. Now, when you put all these requests from each provincial, saying, if only I could have one sister from another, or two, usually it's more than one, 2 or 3 sisters from another province come over to mine, it will solve our problem. So you can see that if every province, only needs sisters from another province, well, it just can't work. Yeah. But deeper than that, there is another mental model, which is that the activities that we are running are a given. We're not supposed to touch them. And so yes, we have less sisters, but we can't alter the fact that we need to run these apostolates. We need to run these schools, these hospitals, or these spiritual centers. Now that's one mental model that the activities don't change. The problem is what we could call a human resource problem. We need more staff, we need more sisters. Another mental model would be to say, well, this is your number of sisters. This is the volume of work they can do. And what you're currently doing is much more than the volume of work they can do. Therefore, the problem is not that you have not enough sisters. The problem is that you have too many activities. Now, if you shift the mental model in that way, then the solution that you're going to look for is more around, well, what are the activities that we will choose to no longer do in the future because we don't have the capacity to do them? You see, so when you're looking at restructuring, transforming your model of functioning and of governance, you need to dive deeper. You need to dive deeper into mental models, yeah? Because another set of mental model is around leadership, yeah? So what's the role of leadership? Do we think leadership is a problem solver? Do we think that leadership is a host of conversations, is a facilitator of conversations in which each and every one of us has to take responsibility for discerning an appropriate way forward? Do we think that leadership is all powerful and has all the authority, and we don't have a say in anything? Or do we, to the opposite, is our mental model that actually authority in the old sense of the word and pre-Vatican II, no longer has a place here, and that this should all be about co-deciding together, and therefore then what do you make of the role of major superior, and how about obedience, etc. Yeah. So I'm not going to enter any of these conversations. I'm just raising them to show that unless you work at the level of the mental models, then whatever you're going to come up with as a solution may not be useful and viable in the future, because you will not have dived into the deep issues that need to be worked on in order to bring real transformation. So to transform your mental models, well, first of all, you have to raise them. But then the other thing that's useful to do is to dive even deeper and to get right to the bottom of the intention, the collective intention. What are we here to do? And what are we meant to bring to the world? What is our mission in the world? What's the testimony, the witnessing that we are meant to bring to the world? What is God calling us to in this emerging reality? given who we are, given our collective capacities, what are we here to do? And so if you dive right down into that level of intention, then you might explore new mental models. You might access a level of transformed thinking. You might revisit the question of adequate role taking, which then will make it clearer the kind of processes and structures that you want to embrace to fully live the mission that you feel that you are being called to live by God in this emerging reality. Okay, so I hope this was useful as an introduction to some of these concepts. We'll be, as I said, we'll be working with these issues of, is it a level of structures, a process? Is it role taking? What about the mental models? And also, what's the profound intention that God has for you in this reality? We'll talk more about it, I think, at the end of March as a preparation for the leadership conference, and then we'll work with that in April. So looking forward to working with you on all that. And in the meantime, all the best, and see you then. Bye-bye.